Throughout its existence, language has been capitalized upon as a means of preserving the social constructions of generations preceding us. We look back at the many ways that such explicit biases have pierced the mainstream and believe our society has moved on. However, we still mindlessly come across the many ways that our colloquial language hinders the acceptance of marginalized groups. While English plays host to the non-sexualized varieties of third-person singular pronouns that can be used for subjective and objective reference, they and it, all people, places, and inanimate objects in French are enveloped into a binary of il and elle, le and la, un et une. While vernaculars have progressively become inclusive of the third person il, the term is very recent to the past few decades, and the binary system continues to be institutionally preserved by l'Académie Française. There are no exceptions, forming the backbone of a linguistic exclusion of intersex, non-binary, and two-spirited people among others. In 1986, these discrepancies led Anne Garreta, author and professor at Duke University, to challenge herself to tell the kitsch love story of two characters, the narrator, or je, I, and whose respective names and genders are never revealed. See, Garreta is a member of the Olaipo, a collective of French writers who bend language with their constricted writing. Garreta, who would later become the first woman accepted as part of this special collective, decided to use the critical avenues opened by constricting her composition to highlight the patriarchal messages embedded within everyday expression. This new idea would be manifested in her groundbreaking novel, Sphinx. Having begun her career not as a writer but turning the tables as a DJ, Garreta centers her story around the contemporary club culture of the 1980s, its narration focusing not on the characters' collective beings, of course not, because they can't, but rather the movements of their individual body parts. Take this quote. "My first vision of something must have struck me. A subterranean work began to take place, digging, piercing the mind within my mind after the blind impact of a fragment of my retina. Now I promise you it sounds a little more poetic and less offbeat in French. However, the confusing effect of not being able to compose coherent and collective judgment is just as pertinent for the narrator themselves, being walled in by the lack of words existing to describe their feelings. Such a condition can complicate even the most basic story into a poorly contained mess, where in this case, the relationship fails as a result of its characters lacking the means to see each other as the sum of their parts. Such a descent towards the institution of language provides valuable insight for Anglophones into how communities of people have structured themselves to be inclusive or exclusive to certain demographics. The issue of gender and non-binary identity in the Francosphere has evolved in a much more complex and polemic manner than it has in American and British protest movements and academia, in no small part as a result of this structure in which male pronouns are given grammatical precedence over female varieties, in addition to the binary sexualization of persons and objects. L'Académie Française, the preeminent institution governing the French language, stands vehemently behind the binary system, calling inclusion of non-sexualized pronouns as being an aberration and a grave error. Garreta allows the innocence of her adolescent love story to be spoiled by a structural deficiency, pointing blame at an inanimate but omnipresent obstacle preventing many marginalized groups from achieving systemic equality.